Hello my quilting friends, my name is Leah Day and welcome to this free motion quilting tutorial for Rose is a Rose. And this starts with a single circle in the center. I'm going to stitch around this circle just to get on the opposite side of it so that way I can tie off and bury these thread tails. And you can find a much more detailed tutorial on how to do this at leahday.com/hide threads. And I walk through it and take a lot of time in order to show you how to do this step by step. But basically I use a cheater needle to pop the thread tails in, send them through the middle layer of the quilt, bury the little knot that I tied, and as you can see that took less than 30 seconds with gloves on, so it's really not that big of a deal. And what that does is it makes sure that your thread tails are not going to come undone, they're not going to unravel, and you cannot see that knot on the surface at all. It's really, really nice. All right, so now to turn this into Rose is a Rose, we're going to start with a single petal shape. Nice small petal, just like so. And now the key here, and all we're going to do from here on out, is we're going to trammel stitch up the side of the petal a certain distance and then branch out with another petal. I looked at a lot of roses. I love roses. They are my favorite flower, and I kept paying attention to how the petals go. And this is the key. They just overlap. One overlaps the other, and they kind of spiral out from the center. So it's just travel stitch back, swirl out and around with the petal. And they can be smaller and bigger. You can kind of play around with it. But then now I'm going to start stacking them up and going around that first set. So again, travel stitch back, swirl out, nice curving shape, travel stitch back, nice curving shape. Now, if any of that feels like a struggle to you, remember that you can always rotate your quilt around so you can see it better. Don't ever stitch in an angle that just feels really, really awkward, kind of like, coloring with your non-dominant hand. If it feels like that, rotate the quilt around so that way you can see better, so it feels better, and that's always going to result in better looking quilting. All right, so that's the basic rules of the design. Now let's switch to the long arm and see if this design is going to also work on a frame. So I'm scoping out a place to stitch Rose is a Rose, and I want to give this a lot of room to expand. So that is the limit of my frame. That's as far forward as I can come, so that way I've placed a pin right there. And I kind of like the idea of stitching across maybe 1.5 of my 9 patches. So I'm going to pull up thread right here. Go. And I just tug on my top thread. And I want you to notice how hard that is. I'm really tugging on that and it's barely moving. That's normal. The tension on a long arm is constant, meaning that even when the needle is up or the foot seems to be up, there is still tension on the top thread. And that is something that a lot of beginners really get alarmed about because it feels very different from a home sewing machine. So just keep that in mind that that's normal. All right, so now we're going to swing around for a circle. All right, I'm going to make it roughly circular in shape. Oh, that turned out good. Okay, now careful travel stitching around so that way I can tie off and bury that thread tail. It's just, it's just one of those convenient things. You don't really want to leave this on the quilt because you'll be constantly having to fiddle with it and move it around. So again, I'm going to tie the thread tails in a knot and bring that knot close to the quilt surface. Then run a cheater needle through the quilt, pop the thread tails in, and feed it through. Again, just like with my home machine, this is my habit. This is how I tie up and bury all of my thread tails. This one's just a little bit on the loosey side, but you can see you really can't tell. That's where I started and stopped quilting. So I think that's really an important thing. It's something that I do every single time I get started quilting. I know some quilters like to build up thread in place, call that the glob of thread method. It's not my favorite, because I use a very slippery thread. This is Isacord polyester embroidery thread, and it's very slippery, and it tends to come undone. So yeah, I don't like using that method because it tends to unravel. So there we go, and I decided just for fun to go on ahead and stitch around that a few times, also because of my travel stitching was kind of messy on one end, and, you know, also just for fun, I'm going to go inside with a spiral. I generally find if you've already been messy, filling it in with a spiral can sometimes help. Alright, let's start our petal shapes. Petal shape, travel stitch back, petal shape, travel stitch back, and so on. Okay, this is working pretty good. Petal shapes are a little bit weird, and my travel stitching isn't perfect. Maybe if I went slow continually. Let's slow it down. Slow and steady wins the race, always with long arm quilting and with home machine quilting as well. There we go. You know, this is interesting. You know, I was spinning my quilt block around on my home sewing machine so that way I could see what I was doing, and so that way it felt comfortable at any given time. On the long arm, this is stationary. I'm moving the machine, and so sometimes I'm stitching and it just feels really awkward. Certain angles just don't feel right to me. And then sometimes I'm stitching and it just really clicks. Also, visually, I'm having trouble with the travel stitching right here because it's, you know, the height of that ruler foot is kind of blocking my vision. So, yeah, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought that certain angles, even on a long arm, and certain motions on a long arm are going to feel natural, more natural than others, but that's absolutely the case. And it feels like down here, I have a little bit of trouble branching out. I can tell some of those petals are all really shallow. So here I'll really concentrate on that. Concentrate on that and swing out and around. I'm going to make these petals bigger. Not only will it cover more space, I think it'll look pretty, and it'll also create a softer design. Backing up, bad travel stitching. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's a work in progress. It's really good to give yourself permission to make a mess on your quilts, even if it's a real quilt. You know, even if it's something that you want to give away. You've got to allow yourself the space to practice, to play, to learn, because that's the only way you're going to grow. That's the only way you're going to build these skills. And I know this quilt was just a random quilt top. It was in my bin. It was not getting quilted anytime soon. So I knew it was no big deal to just pull it out and get it quilted. And I'm so glad I did. Not only am I learning a lot about using my Q-zone hoop frame, I'm also learning quite a lot about stitching these designs and building these skills that I've been needing to build for travel stitching, echoing, all that good stuff. Moving my long arm. Nice and controlled. Yeah, okay. I like this. I mean, like I said, the travel stitching isn't perfect, but I still think it's a really cute motif. And I would consider this a motif, meaning that, you know, this is going to be something that you can stitch on your quilt and it keep expanding and growing and get bigger and bigger. It really stands out nice. You know, this definitely looks like a big honkin' rose stitched on this quilt. And then, you know, you could take it as big as you want it and then stop. You know, on the little square, I decided to surround it with echoes. And that's really an awesome choice, too. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to quilt it. You can quilt it with, you know, surround it with another design that we've already learned as well. So let's give that a try. Let's see here, right here. This is roughly circular. The rose now is roughly circular. And I'm going to surround this with our open heart design. So if you remember that, it's basically like a shortcut to heart paisley. I'm going to form heart shapes. And then I'm going to bounce around it with an echo. And then form another heart shape. I'm kind of working along the bottom edge of where I can quilt right now, just to kind of give myself kind of a little boundary line here. All right, now I can work my way up and around the heart. That looks nice. I like this extra practice with open heart. It's one of my favorite designs that we've quilted recently because it's just so easy and quick. Let's do a really big one. Swing out and around, nice big heart shape. leave some space so that way you can swing out and around. Oop, getting beeped at. That means I'm going too fast. There we go. Oh, that looks cool. Let's make a big heart over here so that way I can swirl into this area and still have space to swirl back out again. Let's make sure I can get back out. Not very gorgeous, but also not terrible. All right. So I found generally when I had limited amounts of space that this was the best thing, just to do like a single heart, bounce it through. It looks like I'm right on the edge of my frame there. That's why that one turned into more like it was smushed on the side. You gotta watch out for your rails that can limit how much space you have to quilt in. All right, now I'm gonna bounce around over here. I think I'll take it right to that seam line. Swirl out. I'm gonna stop on that seam line, so I'm just gonna swirl out one more time. And a few more hearts down this side. I really like that. It's fun to mix up designs and combine them together. I think that the rose is a really nice motif, but you're gonna need designs like open heart that you can quilt around it, because it's not gonna be something that you can just take all the way to the edges. You're gonna lose that rose shape. If you keep expanding the rose and make that rose square, I don't think it's gonna look right. I really think that a rose should be circular, you know? So I think that looks good. I like surrounding it with open heart. I think that's really sweet. There we go, one last heart. Maybe one more. Swirl in, and there, I reconnected with my rose. So that's it for this video. My name is Leah Day, and I hope that you've enjoyed learning how to free motion quilt with me today. If you'd like to learn more about the sewing machines that I used in this video, the Eversewn Sparrow 20 and the Grace Cunique 14 Plus or 15R, come and check them out at leahday.com/machine. I am a sewing machine and Longarm dealer, and I would love to help you find a great machine that will help you quilt the quilts the way you want to quilt them. So come and check that out at leahday.com/machine. Until next time, let's go quilt.